कुछ आएंगे चलो औज़ुबिल्लाहि मिनश्शैतानिर्रजीम बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम अस्सलामु अलैकुम जी आयानू बखैर आगले निहाव चुनुशुम्मे वशमले Ohio Gonzalez, Guten Morgen, Hola, Boyor, Privyet, Kaifahal, Hale Shuma Chatore, Ahlan Wasal Marhaba, Buna, Mucho, Gracias, Swabia, Bali Kareaya, Hosh Galden and Ayo Sayo, Huya Mora, Chivato, Chiha, Yud, Kalimera, and a very warm welcome to everybody who's tuned into PTV World and are watching World this morning alongside my very well-learned colleague who happens to be Miss Hajra Satti. I happen to be Shahzad Hassan Khan. The day is sunny over here in Islamabad. And it happens to be a Thursday. We're looking forward to a Friday as well. That too very early, obviously, because, ladies and gentlemen, it was yesterday that we resumed our duties as anchor persons, that too after Eid. But first things first, hello Hajra, how are you doing today?
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for introducing me. Jazakallah khair. So we had a very pleasant sort of a rainy weather yesterday and it lowered down the temperature certainly. So before the show started, I was pestering my co-anchor here, where are my gifts? I really want to have chocolates from London because I was watching that he was shopping from Dior and Gucci and all of these high street brands, right?
So I had to save, okay. You know, I had to save for at least 3 years, ladies and gentlemen, till the time I was able to kind of go into those stores and actually buy a scarf for my wife or for my sister as well. But having said so, obviously there were a few people who have received their gifts just yesterday. And inshallah, in days to come, probably on Monday or Tuesday, you will get your chocolates as well. And that too, obviously, from not London, but Germany. All right, so that's how we're going to do it.
So it's always said that you get a very sweet reward for the patience, right?
Yes.
Certainly like that, but
Sabar ka phal meetha hai.
Sabar ka phal meetha. So Shahzad, you and I grew up watching DC and Marvel series and whatnot. So yesterday, the Flash movie released its trailer, right? And I remember watching this season Flash because I was a huge fan of the Barry Allen and whatnot, and Arrow obviously. But it was a very interesting sort of a trailer, and lot of people were taking the Twitter and they were commenting on it that it's going to be the best movie ever. But I saw the trailer, and there is this collaboration of multiverse in which the Barry Allen is traveling to a reality where his mother is not murdered. And he's making sure that his mom doesn't get murdered, but he's trapped in that reality because there are not any superheroes there.
But so Hajat, that was exactly what happened in the first season of Flash as well, where, you know, he was running so fast that he actually kind of went on to a very other tangent of the very physical existence being, and then, you know, he was traveling back in time. He could see his mother as well, you know, so all of those vivid images I can still remember. And the sole reason why we used to watch Flash, so initially I started watching it, and then it was my daughter because she loved one of the characters who happened to be in the laboratory. So, gentlemen, on June 16th, you will be in for a treat if you like DC or probably Marvel series as well, you know, because I think that, you know, there are quite a lot of similarities over here. But having said so...
But there's a different brand of DC and there's a different brand of Marvel. The people who are fans of Marvel, they don't want to jump into the DC. I really don't know
it's
what
like
is this
Android
binary.
and iPhone.
Yeah, I really don't know these binaries, but...
But there's one question I have for you, and that is that if you were able to pick up on one superpower, what superpower would you pick up on?
I think grabbing a lot of knowledge and keeping that intact, that would be my superpower.
I think you can still do it, yeah.
No, not at all, because in my mind there's a huge, what do you call that, black hole, and all of the knowledge gets there and doesn't come out. So I would want that superpower to have the, you know, to retrieve all of that knowledge. But having said so, Shahzad, it's starring Ezra Miller, we can see that, and we're super excited because whenever the summer season we see that the Marvel series and the DC's series, they have a huge box office movies coming on, but in the recent times there was a lot of criticism coming on that their movies are not doing very well because they're mostly propagating the huge American myth and how America is there to save the world, and people are really wary of such sort of narrative because obviously this is propaganda.
I mean, but obviously, you know, if they're going to end up making a lot of films which a lot of people are going to watch, or definitely they will be projecting themselves, right? They're not going to project us, you know, because it's them who are actually making films as well. But ladies and gentlemen, with that, let's move on towards the top stories. It was the good news on June 16th. Flash is going to be in our cinema houses as well. Money Back Guarantee is out there as well. It's a Pakistani film. It's in cinemas as of now. But let's move on towards the top stories. So, Haja, why don't you do the honors?
Okay. So, Pakistan and China have reiterated the need for maintaining peace and stability in the region and enhancing military-to-military cooperation. This came at a meeting between Chief of the Army Staff, General Asim Munir, and Commander of People's Liberation Army, China, at the PLA Army headquarters in Beijing. Early on the arrival at the PLA Army headquarters, the army chief was given a warm welcome and presented with the guard of the honors. And certainly, Shahzad, we see that we have a very strong relationship with the China, and there have been a lot of epithets that have been coined to describe this relationship, and obviously we're going to talk in detail about it, but let's kickstart a segment.
Exactly. And since you spoke about China, I think let's move on to Turkey as well for a second, because Pakistan Army's Urban Search and Rescue Team received special award from President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. The award was given in recognition of professional services given after Turkey earthquake in February this year. The award was received by team leader of Search and Rescue Team of Pakistan Army. The team cleared 91 sites, rescued 8 persons alive and recovered 138 bodies from the debris.
Right. So, inna lillahi wa inna ilaihi rajiun, and we are really glad and we are really proud how our Pakistani brethren performed there, especially in a challenging atmosphere in the Turkey. So, let's kickstart our segment because we are going to talk about the investment opportunities in Pakistan. And my brother here, he is certainly very well adept at what are the investment opportunities, because he keeps having this conversation. And I usually am not able to reproduce that sort of the knowledge that he had about the investment.
So I'm going to try. Thank you very much for that as well. So we certainly want to engage our amazing guests over here. But ladies and gentlemen, before we do so, over here in Pakistan, there was a time that all of us have invested in real estate and have reaped good benefits. We've invested in gold, we've invested in stocks and shares, we have invested in whatever opportunity which came our way. But today, times are really critical, so even a person who's actually sitting from outside Pakistan is not really willing to invest in Pakistan. Is that the scenario number one? If they certainly choose to invest because it happens to be their motherland and they happen to be an expat, what areas do you think that they really need to invest in? For Pakistanis, because, people were investing in real estate and all of a sudden the dollar started to go up. This is my understanding. We have the experts over here who will let us know. And, so people wanted to take all the benefit from the dollar price hike as well. And then unfortunately, obviously, they had to withdraw their investments from real estate, where the real estate, a person like me who's actually spent probably 8 lakh rupees on a file, does not get any return, for the last 2 years. So how do we move on with things when we speak about investment portfolio over here in Pakistan? Ladies and gentlemen, we're very lucky that we've been joined by somebody who happens to be the Director, China-Pakistan Studies Center, ISSI, Dr. Talat Shabir. Hello, sir. Assalamu alaikum. Good morning. How are you?
Welcome. Thank you very much for having me over.
And thank you so much, sir, for joining us. Wonderful to have you over here alongside him, ladies and gentlemen, to talk about the international arena and how international investors can come back to Pakistan and invest over here, ladies and gentlemen. We're lucky that we have been joined by somebody who happens to be an investment professional, Mr. Majid Khan. Hello, assalamu alaikum. Good morning.
Walaikum assalam. Thank you for inviting me.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah, because he's actually flown from Qatar to be on the show, so it's great to have you guys over here. So, sir, first things first. Do you think that what I just narrated or what just I said, according to my understanding to all my viewers, was correct? And if I am not correct, please make sure that you stand me corrected.
Yeah, no, I think you are very much correct when you talk of investment in Pakistan. You see, currently we are facing economic crisis, and before economic crisis, actually there's a political crisis also which needs to be mentioned. So what we are looking at is investment opportunities and creating enabling environment for investors, potential investors, to come to Pakistan and do the investment, because that is how I think some part of our economy will be crisis will be addressed.
Okay.
Now the most important thing is that when we expect people to come to Pakistan and invest, where should they invest? For example, you mentioned about real estate. Now most scholars on economy believe that real estate investments are not very profitable as far as country is concerned. If for individual it may be very good to invest in a real estate and get profit, quick profit, swift profit. But for country, because there are many other things that need to be invested in, like you need to invest in AI. You need to invest in manufacturing. You need to invest in businesses, trade, IT. There are so many areas where you can invest, and of course, I think the gains are going to be like what we expect from the real estate. So people need to be educated that it's not only real estate that will work for you. There are many other areas that can.
And exactly, in addition to that, sir, I would want to move on to Majid Saab over here as well, and we'll come back with the same question. That is that. So Majid, we have seen, just, if we take a 3-hour flight from here in Islamabad and land in Dubai, we have seen that, how they have made sure that they're continuously going to work towards the security, providing them with better infrastructure and all of those facilities, which is going to eventually attract all of the investors out there in the rest of the world. So imagine people from America fly to Dubai, people from UK will fly to Dubai, and it's like a vacation place for them. They're working over there as well, and they're still earning billions of dollars. The economy is going up. How do you think we can replicate, or do you think that there is any country, Pakistan should replicate their model? Which country would it be?
In terms of country, to be honest, I think we should focus on China and India actually. And what they have done in the technology sort of landscape, if we look at very closely 10, 15 years ago, in terms of e-commerce, like property technology, education technology, it didn't really exist in India and China.
True.
So I think in my perspective, rather than looking at the financially sort of liquid Gulf states, they have a lot of dollars, right? So we're not in that position. We need to look at the likes of India and China and what they've done with technology. And there's a vast opportunity. And in terms of the opportunities for investment, if it's not real estate, in my view, technology is so broad. You've got education technology sort of platforms, you've got property technology platforms, you have food delivery platforms. So with these businesses, if you support these businesses for an investor, of course you could generate a high return. And this is what institutional investors in the Middle East have done actually. They've looked at these sort of technology businesses in China, in India, and after that actually now Indonesia as well. That's a big focus. And for me personally, obviously I'd want Pakistan to be next on that list, but we need some of these sort of enablers, as Dr. Tilak sort of mentioned. Once they're in place, I think Pakistan will be next on the list, given the potential.
Right. So, Majid, you're based in Middle East, and Pakistan has a substantial diaspora in the Middle East, and there are a lot of remittances which are coming back to the country. So, as someone who's living in the Middle East, but also Pakistani, how do you see the investment landscape in Pakistan? So, if you want to invest here, which sector would you identify in the first place? And secondly, what are the challenges you think you're going to face here?
Yeah, in terms of the sectors, at the moment, I'd say when you look at it from an institutional investor in the Middle East perspective, of course, it's real estate. But within real estate, it's I'd say you could divide it into for instance, the hotel industry as well. So that's doing quite well. But then, I would look at technology, because I think those companies, of course, today, it won't be as developed as China, like the likes of Alibaba in China. But in 10 years, it will be. Because once they mature, once Alibaba has cracked China, next in line, you need to look for a new Alibaba in Pakistan, right? So
exactly, and we'll come back to this as well. Let me move on to Dr. Saab over here. So now, Dr. Saab, we are speaking about security, political stability, having new ideas, having that enabling environment, and in addition to that, when we speak about that enabling environment, obviously the due process should really be taking a lot of time. For anybody who's got $1 million, $2 million, and they're ready to invest, if they're going to come down over here, if they need to kind of seek for 10 different sorts of permissions, I think it's going to take a lot of time, and they certainly won't be really happy about it. So so the ease of doing business, don't you think that it contributes quite a lot?
I think there are two very important factors when we expect investments from abroad. Not abroad, even the local investors would also look at one you mentioned rightly, you mentioned about ease of doing business, and the second is cost of doing business.
True.
The cost of doing business is very heavy in our country. For example, you mentioned about security. For example, a person comes with $1 million in this country, and he finds a person with gun standing in a choke, and every street there's a naka, and so people are they become alert. What is happening here? So we will have to change the visuals of instability in our country. These visuals are very dangerous, for investors. Why would a person invest in a country where you find hue and cry, crisis, protests, and a lot of process? And second is ease of doing business. Wherever you, Majid can guide us better. Wherever you go for investment in a country, you'll find enabling environment. People will be there to help you. People will be there to help you with the processes of doing business. So in our country, I think there's a lot is required to be done with regards to ease of doing business. And when we say enabling environment, for example, I was in Gwadar a couple of weeks back. So I took in the delegation, I took various businessmen also. So when I talked to businessmen, they said, even a Pakistani businessman won't like to go to Gwadar unless Gwadar is absolutely peaceful and appropriate for doing business for Pakistani investors. So I think we have to do a lot to attract the businesses in
Exactly. And two more things which I would want to ask over here. So number one is, because Alhamdulillah, there are two things which were very famous in Faisalabad. Number one, obviously, Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan Sahab. And number two, people from Faisalabad will always have industry. So my father, Alhamdulillah, had a very humble beginning, but he made sure that he's going to put up a startup. It was an industry where we were exporting sports socks for the largest, biggest brands, Nike, Puma, you name them.
True.
So imagine there was a time when the electricity shortage started, then the labor went up, and then it was so difficult for us to kind of manage the industry that we had to rent it out to somebody else, and now they're making tea out of it. So, we had to sell all the machinery and whatnot.
True.
Because China was in competition, the people who were most successful in the industry either went to Bangladesh, Sri Lanka or elsewhere in other countries where they could still survive. Now imagine for a country where everybody wants to have an iPhone in their hand, but imagine what are we giving them in exchange. So probably, so we have been cultivating wheat for a longer period of time. A truck full of wheat probably will equal to only one iPhone these days as well. It's going to cost you 500, 600,000 rupees. How do you think that we come down to a point where we need to understand that we need to make something of our own, made in Pakistan?
Sure. She mentioned about CPEC. We are into industrialization phase of CPEC at the moment. We expected industries from China would flock in Pakistan.
Yes.
And we'll have, a lot of success stories of industries, reviving in the country. That did not happen. Why? It's not only, allocating a space for industries, but you need to actually create a kind of environment for the investors that it's not only labor, it's electricity, it's energy, it's if the production cost of any product goes up, so it won't serve the purpose. A Chinese industrialist would expect Pakistan to have production cheaper than what they, cheaper than the China.
Yeah.
If it is not, so it won't make sense for them. So I think we need to work a lot in this regard. We have to, first of all, is energy. If it's expensive, so production cost will go up, and if production cost goes up, no industry will shift here. When you have a industrial background, you see industries moving out of Pakistan. Why? They had certain incentives where they were moving to. So do we are we planning to give those incentives to investors, local or foreign investors? I don't think so. We have to seriously plan. I think if we want industries to revive, if we want our economy to revive, we need to, I think, do some serious thinking on this.
Wonderful.
Right. So, Majid, since you're based in the Middle East and obviously you understand, you have an expertise on the investment portfolio and stuff like that. So, talking about it, and especially whenever the prices of the dollars go up in Pakistan, we see that there are a lot of people who are hedging their bets on the dollars, and then that creates a very dangerous sort of a shortage in the dollars, and obviously that impacts the inflation and whatnot. And obviously State Bank is trying to control it, and you can't find dollars that easily, especially in the stock exchange. So what needs to be done to, curtail this leakage of the dollar, which is very much prominent in Pakistan's investment portfolio scenario?
I think the key thing is, I think the economic policy needs to be decided and sort of acted upon, like sort of adamantly, rather than sort of chopping and changing and shifting. Because with any economist, like, you either go one way or the other. There's typically only two ways you could go. You go one way and you back yourself. So that's typically what happens in most other countries, and it does happen here as well. So I think that's the key thing, because once you start like moving from one policy to another, the investor and people lose confidence, they start withdrawing dollars. Whereas if it's clear, look, this is the policy, nothing's going to change, then as an investor or as a person, you keep the dollars, because you've got the clarity, the medium term and long term clarity. So I guess that's the key thing. I think there needs to be clarity. There is clarity, I'm not saying there's not, but maybe when you see the dollar withdrawals, it's because the average person thinks something might happen, which might not happen.
Right.
So I think it's probably a communication issue.
So Dr. Shabir, coming to you, we've seen in a lot of countries they're moving away from the dollar. So we see that there's this rise in the exchange of the trade between the local currencies. For example, a lot of people are having trade with China in the yuan, or they're aspiring to in the first place. Do you think so if we have such sort of thinking in the first place, that could ease the burden on the dollar and inflation in the first place?
But that's not economic issue. That is a political issue, basically. I don't think so.
But it does have an economic implication, right?
It has implication.
Yes.
But we won't be able to do it unless we are politically, stable and strong.
Yes.
And there are very many political problems which actually keep us, away from our
Entangled, yes.
problems, our vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
For example, when you see China and US competition, now we are in the middle of it. We are in the line of fire. So I think it's easier said than done that you just move to yuan maybe to attract Chinese businessmen or industrialists or Chinese
But
government.
theoretically, if it does happen, so what are the implications for them?
I think it would be good.
Yeah.
It is simply it will actually end monopoly of one currency,
Right.
and it will actually open avenues for you to
Yes.
trade
And
and
ease
do
pressure on the
business.
rupees a
Yeah,
lot.
it
Yes.
is
Yes.
going to be beneficial but for political reasons, I don't think so. In short term, we are able to do it.
And obviously, economies like China and India were able to do it because now they eventually
Yes.
actually happen to be China. It's China, US and India now. So imagine their economy is number 3, ladies and gentlemen, out of
Yes.
195, 96 countries
Yeah.
as well. So they've kind of contributed quite a lot. Now, sir, the simplest question for any Pakistani who's actually watching you right now is, where do I invest as of now? When we are to kind of talk about Pakistan, because you go
Yes.
to Gotki, you go to Dadu, you go anywhere in Punjab as well, southern Punjab, you see that anybody who actually had ample land is actually going to make
Society.
our society over
Society,
there.
yeah.
So and that's not the sort of an economic cycle we would want over here, because one, you're going to sell it once, somebody's going to build a house on it, and that's it, you're done for the day. How do you think that we really need to come up with brighter, brilliant ideas, and what will be your suggestion to people out there? Because we're going out in 46 different countries, so there can be people internationally thinking where to invest. So please let us know.
Yeah, if you're thinking from individual perspective,
Yeah.
for example, if I have investment, if I have money and I want to invest, so
लिख भी लूँ ना ज़रा फिर
the
जाके ज़रा
real
discuss
estate-
करके invest करेंगे.
real estate is the answer.
Again?
If it is,
Yeah.
because it's just a selfish approach.
Okay.
If it is me having money, I would like to invest in real, because people think it's a swift and quick return on
But since the
doing
dollar
real estate.
started to go up, there's no return.
But there
these
has
days.
to be some regulatory framework. I think it's not individuals; it is the government which should actually guide people. Okay, look, these are the opportunities for you, and you will be able to earn like real estate.
True.
So they should one incentivize. They should diversify also.
Okay.
So it's a very Majid is an expert on this. People would like to get to where there is easy money.
True.
So real estate is easy money, and there are many other things that you. But I think some regulatory authority should be devised. Some mechanism should be devised, and whereby you should be able to invest, diversify your investments, and it is not individuals. it
Okay,
is
so
government.
one, real estate. Number 2.
I think manufacturing has a lot
Okay.
of potential. I meet Chinese industrialists and businessmen. They say in manufacturing has a lot of potential.
Okay.
You have artificial intelligence
Yep.
these days. You have IT. IT
yeah.
is a great opportunity.
Yes.
You have to. I think if with real estate, if you can have artificial intelligence, IT, and manufacturing, or not big in manufacturing, smaller units of manufacturing which can actually help people with less capital to start
True.
their businesses. I think that would be great.
And there's one more place as well, and that is that, ladies and gentlemen, elsewhere in the world, cars actually depreciate. Bikes and cars and everything depreciates. Over here, even a car is an asset. You're going to buy a car today, in a year or 2 years' time, it's actually going to save you a million.
I think
or
it's
2
it's
million
an
too.
asset in the US too because the inflation is global phenomena.
Yeah.
Majid, coming to you. So we've seen that CPEC is a game changer, and we have been hearing this term in a lot of our political, economic, and social discourses, right? And in the shorter term and in the longer term, if you see, for example, it has generated 10,000 megawatts of the electricity, and obviously it has eased our electricity burden or the energy shortages that we used to once face. But in the longer term, how do you see CPEC going on with the Pakistan's economy? And especially a lot of countries have expressed their interest. For example, Germany has expressed its interest, so has Saudi Arabia, because the Saudi Crown Prince came here and he decided to install an oil refinery here and do the investment here with the Aramco's divestment going on, etc. So how do you see CPEC flourishing in Pakistan?
Like for me, I think CPEC is a potential game changer for Pakistan. It has the potential to become a gateway to not only the Middle East but the world. So that's my view. So I think CPEC, I don't know the details, but if it's not working, it has to work, and I'm sure it will work. From an investor perspective, when you look at Pakistan, you look at the key thing as an institutional investor is the sort of geographic location. It is very strategic. You've got China on one side, you've got one of the world's biggest economies. And if Pakistan could connect to China via CPEC, I mean, it's a game changer. And I know, like, on the ground level, there might be issues and the like, but if you look at it from a big picture level, in my view, as an institutional investor, for Pakistan's sort of pitch to investors, if you say, look, we've got CPEC in place, we're connected to one of the largest economies in the world, I mean, that's probably one of the best sort of selling points you could have as a country, right?
Exactly, and we need to take benefit from it as well. Imagine it's just like being a younger brother, to a very rich, amazing elder brother as well, and you certainly need to have that scale. But sir, in addition to that, Dr. Saab, I'm going to come back to you over here. Now, imagine all of these names I'm going to take, there's a very, I believe that, this is the question which we really need to ask. So, let's look at Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Let's look at Ms. Angela Merkel. She's not, serving as of now, but she's served for a longer period. Let's talk about Mr. Putin. Let's talk about, MBS these days as well. I mean, the first few names which I have taken obviously have been there, for more than 10 years. Now, Mohammed bin Salman happens to be one of those people who actually looks like as if he's the one who's calling for all decisions as well, whether it's a yes or a no. Imagine having that one person we all believe in, and then eventually letting them decide for the next 10, 15 years where the economy really needs to be, rather than going into an election every single time after 4 or 5 years.
So, great idea. I think it's a great idea. Just to continue with what you have, I think the leaders you mentioned, one thing that what sounds is the continuity of policies.
True.
If you see China's rise, I think one single factor of rise of China is continuity of policies.
True.
And second, of course, is leadership.
True.
The visionary leadership you mentioned, they were visionary leaders of their countries. They actually aimed at changing lives of their people.
Even Mahathir Sabji.
Even Lee Kuan Yew, if you can
Yeah.
mention. So they were very ruthless in their, in their leadership.
True.
They were very ruthless. I just off air I mentioned about Lee Kuan Yew. He was a very ruthless leader. He was a dictator. And all the development models in the world are dictatorial in their framework. It has to be dictatorial. If you, for example, if you want to build something and then you get into a litigation and it runs for 20 years and people will, it's just messed up. So I think the leaders we mentioned, they were visionary, they are visionary leaders. They just want to change the life of the people, and they actually believe in the purpose of what they think they should
Exactly.
do for the
And
country.
one more thing, sir. Now, the second part of the question, and that is that, what I've seen over here is that a lot of people certainly do not have the power to make a decision. Even if they do have the power, they still won't exercise it because they think that, God forbid, once I'm about to retire, that I might get penalized for it. So, so let's look for all of those things which can kind of, God forbid, get me into a loophole. And imagine that nobody takes a decision that, okay, CC this copy to this one, then the other one says CC this copy to this one, and the decision is never made. So I would want people in all of those administrative posts who can actually literally take decisions.
Just one thing, the leader has to be honest and determined. That is the two qualities. it is not important that a leader should be IT expert, he should be economist, he should be political scientist. He should not be. He should be just a good listener,
And a decision
and
maker.
he should actually be able to form a good team, though that team advises him, and then he takes decision. Responsibility actually lies with him to take decision. But there has to be team. You know, just imagine if you can, I don't want to mention any name in the country. Maybe a leader doesn't have a clue of what economy is,
True.
what IT is, what artificial intelligence is actually, how it is unfolding. But leader is sincere, he is determined, and he has in mind, he has ideas, he has ideals, and he would then hire right people to advise him and right actions.
Exactly.
He is ultimately responsible.
And certainly we've seen this model being replicated in a lot of countries, like you mentioned about China, Malaysia, and obviously these countries have offered great lessons for us to learn. So thank you, Dr. Saab, for coming here. Thank you so much, Madhid, for coming here, for having this wonderful cross-pollinations of ideas. So we're going on a short break, and after we come back, we have a really interesting conversation, so don't go anywhere.
Good morning. अभी तो monkey pox भी आ गया.
आपके टाइम पे था जब आप आए
नहीं.
स्प्रे करा था वो एयरपोर्ट पे
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Thank you very much for staying tuned, and for everybody who just tuned into PTV World, you watching World this morning alongside Hajar Satti and Shahzad Hassan Khan. Ladies and gentlemen, earlier we were talking about, where to invest in Pakistan. Now we are talking about how to invest in human resource, and that too in terms of how to really communicate when you go for a job interview. And that's something which everybody is looking forward to learn as well. And to have that conversation, very lucky that I've been joined by my professor from my university. Ladies and gentlemen, he's Mr. Asif Rasool. Hello, sir. Assalamu alaikum. Good morning. How are you?
Walaikum assalam. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for joining us. Wonderful to have you. Even though a lot of people now want to be digital entrepreneurs, but we're still talking about people who are looking for jobs. And how do you think, what sort of a communication skill set or ability they really need to have when they land themselves in an interview?
There are many challenges and issues here as well in Pakistan. For example, people normally, we do not have very clear career paths. So people usually land into various fields by just like perhaps their family members ask them to go there, perhaps it's a popular trend, perhaps their friends are going there. So these are the, hardly you find people, a few people who are there with their own interests. Like this is one challenge. So when people with this kind of mindset, when they are inside the class, do you think that they are preparing themselves for the target market? Number one, they do not know about the target market. So it is said that when you have got to work in a specific culture, you have got to understand that culture. So I will start off with this Donald Trump quote that if you have got to, instead of directly hiring people, especially business students, or directly inducting them inside the classes, first of all, send them to their dream jobs. Let them stay there for a short time period. And after that, when they're going to come back to your classes, start teaching them. Now, they've got a very different perspective. They understand. I do not need to convince them a lot that communication skills are very important. You need to develop this skill or that skill. They have seen it. Now, they're already convinced. Second,
okay, please continue first.
Second aspect is like in order to understand or in order to get familiar with that target market, so they should go for the really very wise decision in terms of picking the internships, so that they're going to get that culture. And this is another aspect which is really going to polish them. Third one is normally students in our part of the world, they prepare at the end of the day. For example, after finishing their degrees, they get to know that there's a specific opportunity, I've got to prepare myself. My idea is that we have got to start it from day one. The day they get to the campus, they've got to prepare. For example, you people have got the specific industry. So if you have got to appear in somewhere in the interviews, so first of all, the thing which is really going to appeal me is your communication skill and all, but terminology which they're going to. So first of all, you tell me that I'm quite familiar with each and every aspect of this industry. So this is how you excel. So our job is just to make you just familiar from first day, so that you're just going to sharpen your skills and you're just going to pick all the right words, right concept, so that when at the end of the day you are there before the panel, you're confident.
Just a little disagreement over here. Thoda sa tazad
You always agree.
Thoda sa tazad hai. And that disagreement is that, if today, a person who actually is going to land themselves a job interview is not really aware of the target market, is because of the fact that there is a lag in between academia and the job market. I think it's more the university's responsibility to kind of make sure that their students, while they're studying over there, are very well aware of their target market. Imagine that even a professor doesn't know. Even if you ask a professor these days in universities, say, why are you even doing this job? They're like, brother, we certainly might not have other options. God forbid, if that's the problem or if that's the situation. How do you think academia can do better in making sure that the students have a better understanding?
Well, let me tell you very frankly. First time, I'm also going to disagree with you. Shahzad, the question is, if you just look at if you Google this, there is this one concept, universities are not preparing students. It's all over the world. It's not about, we can't confine it to Pakistan. Universities are not preparing graduates.
That's why I said university, I never said Pakistani university.
It's not only here. It's almost everywhere. There is lack of coordination between academia and in certain advanced countries you have got. Otherwise, still, people face a lot many problems because they do not get proper opportunities. We have got thousands and thousands of students. They don't know their target market and they are suffering. And they'll continue, especially now in 21st century, which is very much challenging one, where they are required to time and again reshape themselves. And they are still sitting there with those traditional mindset that, well, after finishing my degree. So these are the challenges.
But obviously these are the challenges, and you talked something very interesting about polishing your skill set, right? And that you should start doing that after, not after you graduate, when you are graduating or when you start your undergrad degree. But having said so, I see a lot of students, the way they interact with the digital platform, and that is a big source for the recruitment, right? For example, websites like maybe Twitter, a lot of employees scan your Twitter before hiring you, right? So how do you suggest, and what sort of tips would you give to students or any potential employer, so how to interact with the social media as to not appear very clumsy and do not mindlessly interact with a Twitter that can dim your employment prospects?
Especially talking about Pakistan, like
Yes.
we have got a very clear divide where people are sitting in their own political camps,
Yes.
and they damn care. I mean, they just spoil their own beautiful platform, and they just speak too much, especially
That's
when they're just communicating with their own physiology coming out, and they
Yes.
should avoid it. Why? Because everyone,
That's a very
especially
mediocre
we tell them,
conversation,
we guide our students that please be careful, whatever the platform you're using. I mean, say things, whatever you have got in your mind, but say it nicely.
Exactly.
Say it beautifully.
And sir, you know, obviously there's a thin line in saying nicely and oversaying things. You know, I think
Yes.
that's something which we really need to learn, because at
Obviously.
times we get so excited by the
Yes.
expression of the interviewer.
Yes.
They'll be like, okay, I think I've got the job. You know, let me just now try to impress the interviewer as well. How do you think that we should make sure that we are talking less or speaking less with the interview?
Oh my goodness, Shazad, this is the most appropriate question, I would say. I have seen people, for example, I just met one guy from one of the top Pakistani government organization. He has been taking interviews for the last 25 years. And he says that the moment I see someone is crossing the limits, I make it sure that at least this person won't get into our organization.
Exactly.
So
Over
we have
smart,
got
yes.
to not be over smart. I mean, if they're going to provide you a very good opportunity, if they smile and all that, so stay.
then
But,
one
but
more thing.
obviously, Shahzad, the lot of, I would suggest nowadays, because a lot of people are applying to the organizations and you would receive 10,000 CVs, and it's very difficult to sift through every one of them, because obviously HR has its own work to do, right? So they have outsourced this work to a lot of automation, artificial intelligence, and they interact with the CVs. Then after sifting through them, the CVs go to the HR, right? So this outsourcing to the AI, obviously, how do you think we should design our CV that the AI is able to sift our CV and you know, goes to the HR department?
Get it designed by AI.
Yes, currently
wow.
this is a problem.
ChatGPT.
This is a problem. For example, we have got consultant, they just charge, and yes, many students they suffer a lot. I fully agree, because what they do is, for example, AI is going to do a very smart work. They have got like a specific coded aspect, so they're going to only pick them. So what our students, they're going to make blunder in this, and they're going to write each and everything
Yes,
there.
yes.
And this is where the disaster
Very
is.
cubert
So
thing,
they need to be very careful about it, and they've got to get familiar with it.
Exactly, very quickly. And you know, one last thing which I would want to share with our viewers, and that is that, you know, so there was these job interview call in a newspaper.
Okay.
And you know, so the owner of the business said that, you know, that for the two shortlisted people, I would certainly want to go out for dinner with them.
Okay.
So imagine he went out on a dinner, you know, called in the first guy, you know, it's like, you know, order whatever you feel like ordering. So he ordered one thing, and then all of a sudden goes to the waiter, says, you know, can you get me pepper and salt and whatnot. And then the second guy comes in, and you know, the second guy orders his food, and you know, all of a sudden while he's there, you know, he kind of eats it first and then be like, you know, kind of, can you get me salt and pepper? So the second guy was hired, and when the boss was actually asked for the reason, he said that, you know, he actually tasted it first and then tried to make changes to it. But the first guy never tasted it first and was already making changes to it. And I think that's something which actually gives you a very fruitful message for
Yes.
anybody to be at any organization. So anything from your point of view which you think that is the most important while you're going for your interview, what is that?
And also, do we need to design a CV differently for every interview, or one CV can fit, you know, sort of?
Correctly. Yes,
what-
thank you very much. Like two questions. Number one is, we recommend it highly that whenever you go for different opportunities, prepare a different CV. So done, clear question, not the same one. And the second aspect is like when we have got to understand that industry, and especially
Yes.
we have got to do such a deep research that even you should know people who are sitting, their
Yes.
mindset, because they are ultimately they are going to influence it. So that's what because if we understand them, it helps us a lot to answer those
And
questions.
thank you so much, you know, for saying this word influence, because ladies and gentlemen, I've always believed, and we've had this culture in Pakistan, that influence can actually land you a
Yes.
job interview.
Yes.
But you're only going to be successful at that job only if you will be dedicated, you will be working, and you will be contributing through that organization. So please make sure to be fruitful.
Yes.
Thank you so much, sir,
Thank you
Asif
so
Rasool,
much.
for being with us. You always, are a bright light. You're a beacon of hope for all of us as well. And when, you open your mouth, it actually kind of makes sense for a lot of people, and we learn a lot from you as well. Hajra, anything you would want to say?
Yes, so before we depart, I think we would like to say that, like Asif Rasool Saab mentioned, that every CV needs to be redesigned to suit the job requirements, and obviously because of the artificial intelligence, automation, that gets picked up first, right? And then there's certain words that AI intelligence, looks after that. So be very mindful of that, and obviously research, because research is going to land you somewhere. So with that, we are going to say Allah Hafiz until next time. It's a goodbye and good morning.
1, 2, 3, good morning. Have a great day.